Hi everyone. This presentation is just a brief introduction to career counseling with women in substance abuse recovery. It's just some considerations, cautions, and solutions for working with this population. So first, I'm just going to talk about why career counseling is important for this population. I'm going to bring in some literature, especially around the barriers and the issues that women face who are in recovery and looking for employment. I'm just going to talk about a few important theories that relate to this population specifically, some ethical considerations, some possible ideas for assessments and interventions that I found in the literature, just some best practices that I've pulled together from all the literature, and then closing with combining dance movement therapy and career counseling for this population specifically. So first, I just want to answer the question, why is career counseling important for this population? And I just want to start with a study by Melvin Davis and Koch. They did a study to see whether the odds of being discharged successfully while employed were greater for their clients than for those who were unemployed. And they did find that being employed gave the clients a 2.63 times higher chance of being discharged successfully at the end of their treatment. Mainly because working does help contribute to the development of a self-concept. It provides self-efficacy and it helps develop self-esteem. And it does serve as a connection to other people outside of their world of recovery and to society in general. And it also provides structure and routine on a daily basis. But despite these findings and some other findings that pretty much found the same results, there is a lack of career counseling and vocational counseling and training in substance abuse treatment centers. And actually only 31% of facilities offer a career counseling component, which kind of surprised me. And it's really not a focus of the 12-step program or the Minnesota model. Only about a quarter of clients in substance abuse treatment are currently employed. And over half of those who were not employed said it was due to their substance use and or abuse that they were not able to find employment. All right, so before I move on to the literature about barriers that women face when seeking employment, there was a study by Sherba, Cox, Gersper, and Lindley that also took a look at barriers to implementation of career counseling in treatment facilities. And a lot of administrators and therapists felt that career counseling was just out of their scope of practice. That they were trained in addiction or substance abuse counseling, but that career counseling was not really in their scope, and they didn't quite know how to go about doing it. And that there was just a lack of resources, staff, and time when it came to trying to fit career counseling into all of the other things going on at the facility and all of the other treatment that the clients were receiving. But moving on to barriers that women in recovery face, the first big one is a lack of employment history or large gaps in employment where they maybe went to treatment or just weren't working, and how that would be explained to a potential employer. And then second, obviously, is the stigma of substance abuse or use and addiction and what that means to employers. Third is the criminal justice involvement piece and or incarceration, which has some sub categories also. Parole conditions. A lot of people on parole or probation are required to live in the area where they committed the crime or where they were living previously to being incarcerated. So that can be limiting as far as where someone can work and what careers are even available to them in that area. Second is education level. 53% of women who were incarcerated did not have a high school diploma or a GED. There's also limited prison vocational programs, especially for women. A lot of the programs are kind of gender traditional programs that aren't really don't really expand a woman's options as far as careers. And then there's restrictions from certain fields and or licenses when a woman is released, especially in the healthcare field. So say a woman had an RN or had a nursing degree, she might not even be able to practice or use that license when released from prison or when finished with her initial recovery process. There's also an issue of lack of transportation. One study that I found was done in rural Ohio. So it's not really as much of an issue here in Philadelphia per se, but in rural areas, there's an issue with lack of transportation to a job site. And then probation and treatment requirements. If your probation requires you to go to treatment, especially, for example, like a methadone clinic, if you have to visit that clinic every day at a certain time, then there's certain shifts and certain jobs that just would not be open to you, that they wouldn't have the flexibility to allow you to work on your recovery and also be employed at the same time. And then continued substance use or relapse could be an issue if you found employment and then you relapsed and your employer was not understanding of that. And then last is just low job availability in certain areas, depending where you live. Some challenges at work that Snodgrass, Jenkins, and Tate found were just attendance inconsistencies if you were to relapse or you were still using. Difficulty coping with stress. If you were coping with stress by using substances and now you're not using those substances, how to negotiate that at work. Issues with organization and with concentration. So on this slide, I just want to talk a little bit about theories behind substance abuse counseling in general, and then how those kind of translate to career counseling or how they overlap. And the first issue is identity and self-concept of women in substance abuse recovery, and how that addict identity kind of plays out when they're talking about their sense of themselves. So Graham cites Savickas, and he said that careers really involve the psychosocial integration of self-concept and social roles. And so if your self-concept is kind of grounded in this stigmatized addict label, that kind of sabotages a person's effort at really integrating themselves into a social role like employment. So kind of an issue for career counseling is just working with that addict label. Some clients may not want to identify as an addict anymore. Some may still maintain that as part of their identity, and kind of just working with that as far as other roles they have in their life, and then what role work will play, and how those will all interplay off of each other. The second issue, some people call it the professional ex-addict. So really kind of understanding how, this is a concept by Brown, understanding how through recovery people gain kind of these he calls them professional characteristics or skills. So the skills they've used to really work on their own recovery, the strengths that they've gained, this concept that those can be transferable to a new job or a new career, and how to go about kind of helping a client discover what those are and those pieces of themselves that they've gained through recovery that they really can highlight when they're looking for a career. And then addiction as career is a concept that the course of addiction kind of has these defining stages, and it's almost like it almost takes the place of or is kind of like a career in someone's life, and how addiction is just one of many potential life careers or roles that a person can have in their life, and kind of conceptualizing it that way to help someone see what those strengths were that they gained through recovery and how they can use them in a new career. And then strength-based approaches. These were pretty prevalent in the literature that I found and in the Postmodern Career Counseling textbook. Basically, same as the top three, just helping a client discover the strengths that they already have within them to find fulfilling employment. And then the last one, I'll talk about this a little bit more in the assessment and intervention category, which involves spirituality and how if someone has a strong spirituality, how that can kind of be incorporated in narrative therapy and narrative career counseling to kind of help them find a sense of their self-concept and how they can use those strengths in a new career. So I just want to add these ethical considerations in here before moving on to the assessments and interventions. The first category I just called competence, and basically really understanding the stigma and the power of the ADDIC label and the ways that clients might feel about that, whether that's a label that they want to maintain, whether they don't, basically just being aware and kind of exploring how they feel about that. Because it would be really hard to do career counseling with someone in recovery and not really quite understand their perspective on that. The second piece is understanding the perspectives on addiction itself and substance use, which there's kind of three main thoughts that are always being thrown about. The first is addiction as a brain disorder. The second is that some people have this view that addiction or substance use is deviance, and that people are just doing it because they want to, and that they could just stop if they wanted to. And then the third is as an alternative lifestyle, that is just something people choose to do. So really understanding what your perspective is going into career counseling with someone in recovery, and how to work with that, and what their perspective might be. And then just addressing your personal fears and anxiety surrounding substance abuse, whether it's touched your life in any way or how you feel about it personally. And then last, respecting the diversity of a client's chosen treatment or programs that they're doing. There's lots of different pathways people choose. They might be doing AA or NA. So even if you have some issues with whatever program they're doing, respecting that is their choice, and the way that they're going about their recovery is their own decision, and working within that with them. And then just a few pitfalls that were mentioned in the literature. One that was interesting was to avoid participating in this fringing process, which Graham explains as women, especially in recovery, may already feel like they're kind of on like the fringes of society, or they're pushed to like these edges, and so making sure that you're not perpetuating that, or you're not kind of unconsciously limiting their choices or helping them to limit the choices that they think they have as far as careers because they're in recovery. And then just your own biases concerning substance use and abuse, gender, and career choices, specifically working with women, careers that you may or may not think are, open to women, or that women usually have. And then concerns about clients in recovery pursuing peer counselor positions. This is a big one in the literature, and just being careful about counseling clients who are interested in becoming a peer counselor, kind of helping them discover what their motivations are for themselves for doing that, whether it's because they feel guilty in some way, or why exactly they'd like to pursue that position. And then just being aware that it's sometimes easy for people in recovery to become over-involved with clients if they do become a peer counselor, over-identification with clients, over-involvement with work, and that there is a risk of possible relapse just by hearing other stories and possible triggers that might come up in the process of that work. And then the last pitfall is really just losing a holistic view of the client because of being so focused on their recovery, or allowing them to become so focused on that label that you both kind of lose sight of what your goals are. So these are some possible assessments and interventions or ways of working with women in recovery that I found specifically might be more effective than others. The first is solution-focused counseling. So really helping the client construct, deconstruct, and reconstruct their concept of themselves and their identity. And this is really focused on goals and solutions and not so much on the problem or their history. So it's not rehashing, oh, I had this job that I lost because of my substance use, and these were the reasons. And it's really focused on, not on past experience, but really focused on the future and the solutions and their goals and how they can get there. Then strengths assessment, motivational interviewing could also probably be in here. Really keeping the focus on the client's strengths they already had, strengths they gained in recovery, and then how those can be used in a future career. And then the last two, these are kind of narrative career counseling interventions. The first is the My Career Story Workbook, and this is an 18-page book. It kind of reminded me of some of the CBT approaches that are used in recovery with the workbooks that the client can go through kind of on their own time. It has 3 parts: telling the story, hearing the story, and then enacting the story. So at the end, the goal is really to move from their current situation towards whatever their goals are, and kind of helping them discover the steps they can take in order to do that. The last one, there was a study done about this one. It's called It's More Than a Job Club Sister. So this was actually for women who were incarcerated and then were released, and this was kind of right after they were released from prison. So it was working with spirituality specifically. It's a 16-hour curriculum. It's done in a group. It kind of is meant as a complement to skills like resume writing and interview skills. And basically it's just described as a creative exploration into strengths, interests, and values as far as career goes. And then the goal is just to increase hope by increasing self-esteem and self-knowledge. So this was a qualitative study that they kind of examined what happened after this group took place, and women reported that they just felt a better sense of hope that they would find the career they were meant to find, and that they really appreciated that their spirituality was a piece of this intervention. So this is just kind of a summary of best practices that I kind of just synthesized from all the literature and from what I've read about career counseling with women in recovery. And the first one is just really need for advocacy for career counseling at substance abuse treatment facilities because I didn't realize that there was such a need for that or such a lack of that at most facilities. So really, if you're working in this field, just being an advocate and really expressing the need for career counseling. The second is just maintaining that holistic view of clients. And then understanding that the addict label might mean different things to different people. I know that AA and NA, a big part of that is, saying I am an alcoholic or I am an addict, and kind of working with that label and kind of the fact that that will never not be a part of who you are. But then there's other views on it that clients might be trying to kind of shed that label totally and leave that and find, a totally new concept of themselves without that addict piece. And then the next one is just understanding the intersection of gender, socioeconomic status, race, etc., and its effect on career possibilities for women, specifically in recovery, because we know that there are issues for women in general as far as career, but then when you add in the recovery piece, how that might play out. And then last is just considering how career counseling fits in as a piece in a larger program or a larger treatment model. Wherever you happen to be working, how does career counseling fit in? If it's not already there, how might you integrate that into someone's treatment plan? How might you advocate for career counseling to become a bigger part of the treatment model in that facility? So lastly, I just want to tie in how dance movement therapy and career counseling can be combined. So how you might work with women in recovery in dance movement therapy with a focus on career counseling. So the first column is really emphasizing that strengths-based approach. So DMT, we also use a strength-based approach, always looking for what is working, what is the healthy part of any person. So you can use movement to explore the effort of strength. And you can do that in numerous different ways, but really just using strength to find more movement possibilities, to find what does strength mean to a client, where can they find their physical inner strength, where are they pulling from to do that, and then using that to build self-efficacy in general, but also as far as career goes. And then also a sense of reconnecting with the body to try to help foster reconnection with the emotional self. And really trying to build up that self-concept that would be needed for employment as part of recovery. And then also a big part of it could be using the body to develop stress and anxiety coping mechanisms. So if there's a lot of stress and anxiety going on about recovery in general or about trying to find a new career, that DMT could be a big piece of that, using a physical way to really cope with that anxiety, whether it's just mindfulness through the body, whether it's a guided meditation or a movement meditation, just to really help clients find that stress coping mechanism that before they might have been using substances, but now giving them kind of some choices and some new tools to deal with that stress and anxiety. And then this is just a list of the references that were listed throughout the PowerPoint and the ones that I referenced, some of the studies for career counseling with people in recovery. Thank you for listening.